The palace corridors echoed with the weight of silence, a silence that was not born from peace but from the absence of her laughter, the sound that once filled his world with warmth. Sheikh Hamdan, the poet prince, stood by the tall window overlooking the sleeping desert, its golden sands now dull beneath a moon that no longer seemed to shine for him. His words had healed 1,000 souls, yet the one heart that refused to mend was his own. There was a cruel irony in that, a healer who could not heal, a poet who could not write away his pain. Each night he picked up his pen as though it were a sword, trying to battle the ghosts of her memory. His ink bled emotions that the world adored, poems that broke the internet, lines that made strangers weep. But between every verse, he hid a secret agony. The world saw poetry, he saw fragments of a broken vow, pieces of love that slipped through time's cruel fingers. He wrote not to inspire anymore, but to survive. There were moments he wished he could stop feeling, stop remembering, stop caring. But a poet's curse is to feel everything too deeply. Even the wind that brushed past his window carried her name, even the stars seemed to mock him with the same light that once danced in her eyes. He was haunted not by her absence, but by the way her presence still lingered, in his breath, in his thoughts, in the verses he swore were fiction. He often walked through the royal gardens at dawn, barefoot on the dew-kissed grass, his robe trailing behind him like a shadow of sorrow. Every petal reminded him of her touch, soft, fleeting, unforgettable. The guards pretended not to notice the glimmer in his eyes, the kind of pain that didn't need tears to be seen. For what was a prince without his muse? What was a poet without his reason to write? The world adored Sheikh Hamdan for his strength, his poetry, his heart. But none knew the storm he hid beneath that calm gaze. When he smiled for the cameras, it was only to protect the illusion that royalty meant perfection. Inside, he was just a man drowning in the memory of a woman who once saw the real him, not the prince, not the public figure, but the human beneath the crown. She saw his soul, and perhaps that was why her departure shattered it. At night, his journals became his confessional. He would write until dawn painted the sky in pale regret. His words were filled with contradictions, love and loss, hope and despair, royalty and loneliness. He often wondered if she ever read his poems, if she recognized herself hidden between the metaphors. Every verse was a whisper to her, every silence a scream she could not hear. There were days he tried to move on, attending gatherings, laughing with friends, pretending to be healed. But healing is not forgetting, it's remembering without breaking, and he hadn't reached that stage yet. Even the rhythm of the city reminded him of her heartbeat, even the call to prayer echoed with the same serenity her voice once carried. He could not escape her, for she had become part of his very breath. The poet who healed others through his words had forgotten how to speak to his own soul. He gave the world his strength, his art, his emotions, until nothing was left for himself. People called him Fazza the strong, Fazza the kind, Fazza the poet of love, but no one called him what he truly was, a man who loved too deeply and lost too painfully. His poetry was his crown, but also his chain. Sometimes he would ride deep into the desert alone, far from the noise of the world. There, under the vast emptiness of the sky, he felt closest to her. The desert had witnessed their love, it had seen their laughter, their promises, their unspoken dreams. Now it witnessed only his silence. Every grain of sand seemed to whisper her name, and every breeze reminded him of what could have been. He once believed that poetry could save him. But he learned that not all pain can be turned into art, some wounds are too sacred to be shared. There were verses he tore apart before anyone could read them, words too raw for the world to see. They were not meant for fame or applause, they were the remnants of a soul quietly bleeding. Sheikh Hamdan's poetry became a reflection of his inner war, beauty born from suffering, love wrapped in loss. People saw inspiration, he saw.
The night sky became his confidant, a vast canvas where he painted his pain with starlit metaphors. Every constellation seemed to hold a memory of her, every flicker of light a reminder that she still existed somewhere beneath the same heavens. He would often look up and whisper, "Do you still think of me when the world goes silent?" It was a question carried by the wind, unanswered yet always returned by the gentle sigh of the desert air. For the poet, love was no longer about possession, it was about presence, the kind that lingers even when two souls walk different paths. He had written about love in its purest form, but now he understood its cruelest truth, that sometimes, love's greatest act is letting go. There were nights when he almost convinced himself he was healing, but then a scent, a sound, or a song would shatter his illusion. Healing, he realized, was not a straight road but a circle that always led back to her. Every dawn felt like progress, but every dusk reopened the wound. Still, he carried his pain with quiet grace, for he knew that even heartbreak could be holy when it came from a love that was real. The palace walls, adorned with gold and glory, felt emptier than ever. Crowds adored him, nations respected him, yet none of it filled the hollow that her absence had carved within. His laughter, once genuine, had become a performance, an echo of what used to be. Behind closed doors, the prince became just a man, stripped of titles, stripped of pride, staring at the last photograph they took together. Her eyes in that picture still held the spark that ignited his poetry. He would trace her face on the glass with trembling fingers, as though his touch could bring her back from memory's cage. Sometimes he dreamt of her, those dreams where she came smiling, not with the sadness that marked their farewell. In those moments, he wasn't Sheikh Hamdan, the prince, nor Fazza, the poet. He was simply the man she loved once, without crowns, without walls. But morning always came too soon, stealing her away like a cruel thief. He would wake up to the sound of his own breathing, heavy with the weight of reality. And as the sun rose over Dubai's skyline, he would write again, capturing in words what his voice could no longer say aloud. There were days when he saw her name in the news, not as his past, but as someone else's present. It hurt, but he smiled anyway, for he had promised to love her without condition. Love, he had learned, was not about being together, but about wishing happiness even when it's not yours. His heart broke quietly, beautifully, like the ending of a timeless poem. And though he had lost her, he never lost the love itself. It remained within him, immortal, breathing through every line he wrote. In the end, Fazza accepted his pain not as a wound, but as a part of his poetry. Perhaps that was his destiny, to feel deeply so that the world could feel through him.